Good morning and welcome to our YouTube channel, everybody. This is a very special week for me because, as you may have noticed, my subscriber count has just topped the 10,000 mark, a target that only a few years ago seemed really out of reach. After all, model railroading is very much a niche interest with relatively few followers on YouTube. It seems like only yesterday that my buddy Vinny in Phoenix, also known as BNSF 6951, and I hit the 3,500 subscriber mark on the same day. And since then, my channel has really taken off, so I guess I must be doing something right. Now, a milestone like this calls for something special for my viewers. It is, after all, my viewers that have made this channel what it is, so I thank all of you for helping this channel grow. But that doesn't solve the problem of what to do to make this milestone special. I already have one contest running at the moment, so running a subscriber special competition doesn't seem like the best thing to do right now. Now, as the end of 2019 was a very difficult time for me, with my wife in and out of the hospital for a couple of months, I didn't get to do an end of year recap like I was planning to. So maybe now would be a good opportunity to take a look back over the last few years at some special milestones in the development of my YouTube channel. And since 2019, particularly the latter half of it, was a spectacular year for the growth of this channel, I'm thinking that many of these videos are going to be from that period, thus helping to fill the void from that missed opportunity. So without further ado, let's take a trip back and view some of the milestones in the development of this YouTube channel. This is the humble beginning from which this channel grew. Although not the first video I posted, it was the first time that I presented my HO scale model railroad for the world to see. The slideshow included some of the earliest construction photographs I took of my layout in my home in Marquette, Michigan. Prior to this, I had only ever posted videos of a project that I developed in a train simulator program. Videos that never gained more than a couple hundred views. Yet this one was a lot more popular. At this time, I only had a still camera available to me, with no way to record moving pictures. I do remember that this video continued to be more popular than any of my more recent releases for a couple of years afterwards. Although this video received only a very few views, in fact it was only 243 last time I checked about a week ago, it was the first time that I owned the hardware to present video footage of my railroad. Prior to this, I had only ever presented slideshows. At this time, the railroad was still running with a temporary 3-track staging yard over my workbench, where the harbour town of Port Eastleigh would eventually be built. This video seemed like a pivotal moment when it was first released. It was the first time I received 100 views on the first day, and at the time I thought that was really spectacular. I include it here as a measure of just how far my channel has grown over the past few years. To put things into perspective, now when I release a new video, I typically get around 2,000 to 3,000 views on the first day. And even after 4.5 years, this video has barely 5,000 views, a number which I now typically hit on the 3rd day after a new release. I include this video for 2 reasons. Firstly, because I love my niece, whom I seldom get to see, and secondly, because it quickly became my most viewed video, and it held that position until fairly recently. Over the past couple of months, it has, however, dropped into 3rd place on my all-time most viewed videos. Of all the young people who have visited my railroad room, Mackenzie showed far more interest and indeed operating ability than any other boys, totally disproving the widespread belief that model railroading is only a boys' hobby.
Doesn't have enough weight to pull 4 cars up the hill. If you only a bigger locomotive.
This is another video that received very few views, and in fact it still doesn't even have 1,000 views to this day. I include it here because it seemed like a big deal to have my layout on tour for an NMRA regional meet. Here we see Jim, who at the time was fairly new to operation, accepting the challenge of switching the car float. And at the previous operating session, his predecessor had managed to capsize it. Will Jim do any better?
Interested in separating the mold from the master without...
This video must be included because it was this project that represented my first foray into earning money through what had hitherto always only been a hobby for me. When I initially offered my crates and molds for sale, I had very low expectations. Yet within a year, I had sold enough to recover the entire cost of the project, including the bucket of castings that I kept for myself, meaning that all they cost me is my time. And at approximately 37,000 views, this is still among my most viewed videos of all time. During the period of this video, I demonstrated my methods for making several different easy yet great looking freight car loads for flat cars, gondolas and hoppers.
Like this I could just throw straight in.
Most were pretty popular, although this one has received more than twice as many views over the years as any of the others. So it seems like an obvious choice to represent this group of videos.
Until the entire base was covered. And now what I need to do is get the styrene cement. Hopefully I can do this without disturbing it too much. Here's my canyon from...
Although I didn't consider it particularly significant at the time, this video must be included in the list because it is the first time I got paid to work on somebody else's railroad. As most of you already know, this is now my full-time profession, thus making this video a turning point not only in the development of my YouTube channel, but also my life. Since my business and this YouTube channel are so closely intertwined, this important milestone cannot be omitted. Any compilation of my YouTube video highlights would be incomplete without this one. I recorded it during my second stint of work on the California layout. It recently became my all-time most viewed video, with over 60,000 views, more than 12,000 ahead of my current second place video.
Prior to this, I'd always try to spread it out in a little bit in the middle.
Interestingly enough, it was a slow starter, taking a while to gain momentum.
And if you get the amount of ballast, write it in hot water.
I include this video for two reasons. Firstly, it deserves a mention as my second most viewed video. Secondly, it demonstrates how this journey has had its ups and downs. I received many comments on this video, asking the same questions over and over again about the suitability for applications that I specifically said in the description were outside the scope of its intended purpose. Eventually, the comments became both demanding and downright abusive, so I simply disabled all comments for this video. Thankfully, it's the only time I've ever had to do this.
Well, I've left it in the bucket of hot water for a while.
This video is included because it was the first track planning video I posted online. Although I received no direct payment for this plan, it was the catalyst for what has now become one of the most lucrative branches of my business. As more and more people appreciate my layout design skills, I've received a steady stream of custom layout design commissions that doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So if you want one of my custom layout designs for your own room, it's probably a good idea to get in line soon, as the waiting list is likely to continue to get longer.
It's now almost midnight on the last day of
This video is included as it frames the one I released almost exactly a year previously. Although not the final video I made of my first professional layout build, it was the one in which I announced that the project had come to an end, concluding with symbolically descending the stairs and turning out the lights for the last time. It was even more significant to me on a personal level because it was the first time I had ever got scenery on a model railroad to a state where it could be called complete. Although of course a model railroad is never really complete, because there are always a gazillion more details that can be added.
This peninsula now, the logging camp. So here I am, leaving the room for the last time. Here I am with Cheyenne.
I selected this video not because of any great significance to the growth of my channel, but for purely personal reasons. Growing up, I always wanted a sister, and as an adult, I always wanted a daughter. This is one of two videos featuring a young woman who my wife and I briefly fostered. It was during the drive to this operating session on a friend's railroad that Cheyenne said something to me that brought tears to my eyes. I'm not going to repeat her words on this open forum because they were so special to me. But when looking through old videos, seeing this one reminded me of the occasion. No, this video doesn't refer to packing up my own railroad, but it is one I picked to represent the Great Northern's Hinckley subdivision layout that I built in my Michigan garage. This was the first layout I professionally built from start to finish on my own, so it deserves a mention in this list. I also wanted to include a time-lapse video somewhere in the list, and this was my excuse to do so. This video is selected because it is the first time I actually got paid to design a model railroad. Therefore, it is an important milestone in my business development, and therefore this YouTube channel. The layout was later simplified because its complexity exceeded the customer's budget, although parts of the design were recognizable in the finished layout as eventually built.
We put a lot of hours in.
I selected this video because it documented an intense week-long scenery building project for one of my own customers, where I was working directly as Superior Model Railroads rather than being subcontracted by another builder. I include this video because it is my most watched and most commented layout design video. It's also fourth on my overall list of most watched videos. Some of the most interesting discussion in the comments has been regarding my calling a room almost 26 feet by 11 a tight space. To many of my viewers, this would be a dream come true. And indeed, many clubs in England where I grew up don't have that much space for a layout. So why then did I call the space tight? It has a lot to do with the customer's expectations. If the customer only wanted a basic switching layout, that same place could have been called generous. But he wanted a double-track continuous main line, a long run, passenger trains, a yard, a mine branch, and lots of industries. To give you another example, at almost 50 feet by 30, my own basement is more than enough to include everything I want on my own layout. But if I were to switch to O-scale, well then it would immediately become very tight indeed.
Slide this middle section out. If not, I'm going to have
this video had to be included
because it is the last one I recorded of my old layout in Michigan. Dismantling it was bittersweet for me. While it was hard to take it apart, and even harder to watch the flames consume those parts that I elected not to bring to Tennessee with me, at least I knew that I was moving to another home with a far larger site for a bigger and better version of the railroad.
Well, here is what is left of the lighting.
Now, if only I could get some free time to start working on it again.
Burnt already. Well, several more hours have passed, and as you can see, the big pile of wood is no more. So I'm going to get back to work, and I'll check in with you again later.
This is another of my top 10 videos as far as wartime views is concerned, although that's not directly why I chose it for this list. The N-scale layout that I started working on immediately after my move to Tennessee coincided with a huge boost in both views and subscribers. It was during this project that my channel suddenly started to grow, suggesting that there were a lot of N-scale modelers out there that were now a lot more interested in what I had to say. This was one of 2 boom periods when I gained over 1,000 new subscribers in a 4-week period.
There's a few more bits that I can't do just yet.
Shortly after completing the N-scale project, I started another layout build for another customer, this time in my own workshop and in HO scale. For the second time, I gained a 4-digit new subscriber count in a 4-week period, even though it had dropped off significantly in the interim. I take this to mean there is a lot more interest in these layout builds than in some of the other work that I do. I'd like to present more of these videos, but I can only present what I do. There have been a couple of other small layout builds since then, but unfortunately some customers insist on secrecy for one reason or another. Nevertheless, I do have a pretty big layout build lined up, but it's still somewhere in the future because the house that will accommodate it has yet to be built. It is no coincidence that there are a fair number of layout design videos appearing in this list, because most of my work recently has been layout designs. I could have selected many others as well, but I didn't want to overload this with them while ignoring other types of video. This one is selected because it was the first design that the customer wanted a fairly high degree of prototypical accuracy. Until then, everything had always been either entirely freelanced or only very loosely based on a prototype. I have done a few other prototype-based layouts since then, but this one in many ways was the pioneer.
Provided one is able to walk on water, maintaining the track and the curve shouldn't be a problem.
I hesitated over this one, but eventually I decided to include it anyway. It was just a bit of fun. The first time I tried presenting an April Fool's Day video on my channel. It was very well received, although I did have to come back and put a big spoiler in the description because a few people got annoyed with me after watching it later and not appreciating the timing.
This is one area where numerous access hatches will be.
And since this scene is completely isolated from the rest, this video had to be included because the development of this layout was such an interesting journey for me. From a relatively small room over a one-car garage to experimenting with cantilevering the train room over the customer's backyard to gain a little more space, to the customer eventually having a large basement excavated for the railroad. Of all the designs I have done, this is one of my favourites. And having reached almost 30,000 views in the first 2 months, clearly is also a favourite among my viewers too. So for everyone who likes this plan, I have some good news. You haven't yet seen the last of it. There will be some fairly significant changes to the plan as the construction time gets closer.
And I did think it was going to be a real problem to install them, because
this video has been included because in it I kick off a brand new business venture.
Of the running rail. So that's what I did.
As my recent viewers are aware, I have just started producing hand-built turnouts and slip switches to order using Fast Track's jigs and tools. Initially, the project was simply to ensure the continued availability of number 8 double slips since the demise of the Walters turnout line, because I can't in good conscience continue to specify a track component in layout designs unless I know it's still available.
I want to make a modification.
Since creating the double and single slips, I've expanded the range with turnouts in several different configurations, and at the time of recording this, I have added at least one new configuration each month since the initial release, and I intend to continue expanding the range as fast as orders allow.
So there are my 24 top picks for this special occasion. There's nothing significant about the number, it's just how many I ended up with after going through a list of more than 300 candidates. And I will include links to all those featured videos in the description down below. Now if you have any thoughts on other videos that you think perhaps should have been included, feel free to leave a comment down below. And be sure to tell everybody why you think those videos should have been included. And if you're feeling really industrious, why not also dig out the links and include those in your comments so that others can find them more easily. Well anyway, that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.